Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. I'm going to start doing these a lot more frequently, perhaps daily, at least during the week. I'm Lisa Peterson, the founder of Wealth Clinic. I'm a money and business coach. I help entrepreneurs fall in love with money. And that really has two angles to it. One is the emotional experience in our relationship with money. How do we actually create peace around that? And then how does that translate into the practical world, into our experiences with money so that we're able to earn more of it, save more of it, invest more of it, all of that good stuff. So what I had decided to do was start doing these regular videos, and it's really important that I hear from you and hear what kinds of questions you have. Perhaps when I start to do these videos and you see what's happening in the conversations, it will inspire you to ask questions of me so that I can go live and answer your questions. I also have a confession to make, and that is I am an emotional empath, and I know a lot of people that follow the work that I do are the same, so perhaps you can relate. But what I found is that it's hard to do some of the things that we want to do in sharing what we're working on in social media or in blog posts when we are not tying in the work to an emotional experience that someone's having. So you may know that from my podcasts, every once in a while, I'll share with you something that I'm personally going through. And then I will, you gotta say, hi, Jenny. Hi, Vaughn. So nice that you guys are joining. Gals are joining me. Thank you. So what I found was it's really difficult to talk about this stuff when there isn't someone needing assistance with something. So I do that really well in my coaching. I do it, in groups. I do it privately, one-on-one. But the challenge is writing about something when the energy has died down. Even after I go in and work with a client, it's hard for me, if we've actually healed whatever they were coming to me with, it's hard for me to write about it because the energy is gone and I can't even tune into it. So this is a new approach. The idea is without talking to someone and giving answers to questions, I can come on to Facebook Live, take your questions. The more detail you give me, the better, the more I can feel into what's going on for you. And then I'll come on to live and answer the questions. It can be totally anonymous, which, you don't have to worry. Nobody has to know that you asked those questions. I know with money, people kind of freak out about that. So don't worry. But I sent out an email today. I got, several questions. I'd love to see more of them. I also had some comments in some different Facebook groups that I manage, and that was really helpful to me. And so what I wanted to do today was take one of those questions that came up and dive into it and give you kind of some things to think about, because I think all of us would like to save more money, because that's what this question was about. And yeah, so, if you're here, I'm curious, you can give me a 1 or hell yeah, or whatever, if you are thinking that you'd like to actually be able to save more money. Because yeah, I think we all would. And the idea is that, the more you can let me know what you think. Is this an important topic to you? Are you interested in these ideas? Then it helps me to tune into what you're thinking about. So, what I will do is go ahead and share with you this question that came in. What she said was, I feel like I'm good at making money. I have got a track record of making money, but the problem is there's a sense of I am so happy that I worked hard and that the money is coming in. I really deserve to get what I want right now. I worked so hard, so isn't the payoff to go and spend money and buy something that I have been wanting to buy, or maybe even, in some cases, invest into our business? And what happens, what she was explaining, is that at that time that's going on, there's no thinking about saving money. And if she goes and buys things, then after the fact, there's also this thought in the back of the mind that someday I'm going to make a lot of money and then I'll be able to save money. So it just delays the feeling. And what she also shared with me is that it's actually really painful to share this. So I understand that completely. And I want to start by saying that you are not alone, that a lot of people have trouble saving money, especially when we're entrepreneurs. There are so many different opportunities, ways to invest in our business. We also, I think that we get used to this sort of delayed gratification where sometimes it's like feast or famine, where, you know, the money comes in, we haven't really been able to take care of the things that we wanted to take care of, and we can't help but buy these things. And before you know it, there's no money left, and we have not put anything into savings. And that goes for regular, just disposable savings, that goes for an emergency savings account, and it also goes for saving into retirement, because those are all really important things to do. So can you relate to what just got shared? It's great if you give me a comment, just a shout out, tell me what, if you can relate to what she was sharing with me. I also found that, you know, entrepreneurs, it's very different for entrepreneurs than someone who gets a paycheck, because when, you know, granted, you may be paying yourself a paycheck, but it's probably nominal when you're a business owner. You're trying to, depending on how your business is structured. But when you have a regular paycheck, there are some vehicles that you can automatically save into. And a lot of businesses don't set those up, especially in the first, you know, 5 years of business. There may be not automatic savings accounts that money is going into. We can talk about that later, but I just want to say that you are not alone and that a lot of people struggle with this. Part of the reason that I picked your question first is because I feel like saving money is a really big challenge. I saw it when I was a mortgage banker in Tahoe, which is like a small community. There are a lot of entrepreneurs. And what I noticed was I would go in to do mortgages for business owners. And I'd be like, okay, these are, you know, here's your mortgage application, fill everything out, give it back to me, and I'll start making sure that you can qualify for this mortgage. Well, oftentimes you need to have a certain amount of money in your savings account when you apply for a mortgage. It may only be like a couple months of your expenses, but there were many times where I could not do a mortgage for someone because they had no savings. And more often than not, that was the entrepreneurs that just hadn't saved money. It was coming in and it was going back out. So that's what this conversation is about. What I was saying is how I'm going to approach this question is twofold. One, I want to talk about the emotional thing that's going on with this question. I also happen to know this person, so it's going to be specific to them, but I think that it will all have something that we can take away from it. And then the second is the practical application of what can you do differently going forward so that you don't feel so frustrated with yourself for not saving money. So first off, the emotion. So if you recall, there was this sense that when the money comes in, there's almost maybe a relief, but there's also this desire to get a reward. Like, it's the reward of working so hard that now I have this money and now I want to go spend it. And this is very interesting because not everything in life is like money, where when the thing that you're working really hard to do is to get the money. But the problem is that the reward is most of the time not saving. The reward is actually spending the money. So it's like you can very easily fall into this cycle of thinking that you've got the reward. You go and buy the thing that you want, but the real reward of long-term savings isn't even entering into the equation. So emotionally, there's a desire to get kind of like it's almost like a drug, right? It's like an aphrodisiac, try and say that word, where you want that sense of satisfaction. Like, I deserve this, I've worked so hard. So that happens. But the other thing that I want to mention is that when we fall into this behavior, we end up kind of beating ourselves up, and that emotional baggage starts to grow and grow and grow. And so on one hand, we're trying to get this emotional excitement, this reward, this euphoria. But on the other hand, we're trying really, really hard to avoid the pain of the fact that we're not saving money. So it's sort of, the more we beat ourselves up about not saving, the more likely we are to actually go buy stuff when the money comes in. So I'm curious, does that make sense? I'm looking at your notes. So Crystal, Ashley, Vaughn, definitely feel feast or famine. Yeah, similar for sales. So thank you so much for that. I'd love it if you just keep those comments coming. And maybe even on that point where money is kind of weird that way, right? You're working so hard that you think, well, at some point I'm going to get the reward. I mean, and then when you go to spend the money, you're like, wait, but I didn't take care of all these other things. So that's kind of one of the behaviors I want you to pay attention to. I also want to mention that after a while, this behavior ends up creating emotional baggage, which actually can create even more problems than you realize. So you're holding on to this guilt and this, it may be shame. I mentioned that when the person was sharing this story with me, that they said it was really, really, really hard to share this because they would rather avoid it. Well, the more emotional baggage you have about not saving, what I first want to say is it super, super, super important that you realize that in that moment, you are doing the best that you possibly can. And there is a very strong likelihood that the circumstances around reward go really far back in your childhood. A lot of my work, if you've worked with me before, you'll know that things come up as we're diving into the money story about our childhood and the way that we were reprimanded, the way we got in trouble, and also the way that we were rewarded. So if we have a pattern of thinking, well, whenever I work really hard, I deserve a reward, then in all fairness, are you not doing what you were learning from a very young age to do? Right? I think that's kind of how it works. So we are actually doing exactly what we were taught how to do, work hard, then enjoy the rewards of that behavior. And the other thing that I think is helpful, because the only way that we're going to shift our behavior around this stuff is to give ourselves some love about this particular challenge. The ways that we can do that are, long. I'll give you a few things. One is that you have to reach a point where you accept that this is the behavior that has been happening to you, and you just accept that that's what's going on. Just because you accept something doesn't mean that you're going to keep going with that same behavior. But if you ignore it and you avoid it, you're not accepting it. So number one is accepting it. Number two is realizing, just like I said, you're doing the best that you can, and there's no reason to beat up on yourself. Number three is actually forgiving yourself for whatever's happened in the past. Like, I really, truly forgive myself, and I'm letting it go. Now, you can, put some notes down, because I don't know that in our conversation right in this moment, you're going to forgive yourself for a history of not saving. But the point is to look at the fact that there's some forgiveness and love that you can be showering in your own direction to help with this. As that starts to soften, the stress starts to diminish, and it opens up the possibility for, well, how can I do things differently? What happens practically? I also want to say that there's something else that you could dive into, because, I'm always looking at these little fingers of what can be happening. You may actually want to dive into what does reward mean to you? Like, what is that? What were you taught? What are your beliefs about reward? Is reward only in the moment, or is reward something that could have a long, tail, perhaps? Like, could reward be something that happens in the distant future? This is touching upon delayed gratification, right? Because with savings, you have to have the ability to delay the gratification, delay the desire for the euphoria at some level to make sure that you have some money left over to save. Those are some things emotionally that are coming up as I tune into it. I will also say that as we move into the practical, I noticed in my own behavior that saving was never something that I was really good at. And that might surprise you, because you may know that I've been able to save a lot of money, but I haven't done it in the traditional way, perhaps where there's a bank account and you're just putting money into that bank account without any goal for that bank account. I think that sometimes we think savings is like, we're just going to put it out there and it's going to sit, or we listen to these financial commercials and we think, oh, I have to save for my retirement, even though I don't know what that's going to look like. Well, none of that really actually worked for me. What works for me is having a vehicle for savings. And as you may know, my husband and I build real estate projects. And I have found that when we don't have a project going, I am less likely to save any money. But when we have a project going, I become very sensitive to the money and to where is the money going. So I spend less and I focus my attention towards saving money for the real estate projects. It's like I'm convincing my mind that the reward is in owning the real estate, not in my retirement that might happen 30 years from now, but the fact that I'm going to have more assets build over time in this real estate. And it's not just the home, like it's not as satisfactory. I think it's great to own your own home and be investing in that, but there's something that happens when you have a goal and you know where that goal is taking you, you know that it's tangible, that it's going to help you get where you want to go, which for me is passive income. So I know if I can create this source of investment and put my money into it, over time, it's going to create a passive income stream. That gets me super excited. What do you think? Is that interesting? Number 2 and number 3 are what I need to do. So tell me more about that, Ashley. Thank you so much for commenting and for being here. So finding, and sometimes our business is serving in this way, you know, like we're making investments into our business. But I think that we have to be really careful to not have everything go into the business. And there's a lot of reasons why, you know, things change, the economy changes. Like I'm 50 years old. I've been through many different recessions. When they happen, they typically happen where most people are blindsided and they're overexposed, and a lot of people lose their businesses because of that overexposure when the economy shifts. I'm not telling you this to scare you, but I am saying that life changes, trends change, the way that people are using our products and services change. And so when we invest everything in the business and not into other vehicles, and I like a few different vehicles, then we can find ourselves you know, in a rough situation. I heard the other day someone talking about investing their whole life in a magazine and thinking, well, someday I'm going to sell that magazine. And then the internet came, and you know, she kept thinking, well, if I do this and I invest more money into this, then I'll be able to get it to work. And eventually the business folded and she was never able to sell it. You know, she had probably what she thought was $500,000 in that business that she would someday be able to use for her retirement. But by the time the dust settled, there was no money left and no retirement. So these are the things that we want to think about when we only put investing in one bucket. You know, same thing with real estate, right? You want to be careful about that. We know that one because that didn't happen all that long ago. So my point is that in this situation, what I've done is find an incentive for the reward. And it doesn't have to be like some big, huge thing. In fact, what I'm going to suggest is if you are not saving money now, one of the tips that actually came out of this book, I love it. You can see it's all dog-eared. I have to show it to you. Worth It by Amanda Steinberg. Great book. I love her. She was on the podcast. You can listen to the Art of Abundance podcast with her. But she was talking about we get in this habit of thinking, I'm not a saver, I'm not a saver, I'm not a saver. And that's true if we're not saving money. But even if we took a quarter and we started to save that quarter in a piggy bank, all of a sudden we could say, well, I'm a saver, I'm a saver, I'm a saver. And so we don't have to have this be big to start. This could be like $10 or $100 in a savings account to all of a sudden start to change our belief system to saying, hey, look at that, I'm a saver. And that experience will give you some euphoria, like, hey, I'm not who I used to be. I'm changing my behavior. And then, you know, after a little while of trying that, you can start to look at other opportunities or things that you're excited about that maybe you could invest in. And we could talk about that for days. But the idea is change your behavior so that you see yourself as a saver, as an investor, as someone who is taking huge steps to change your life in a positive way. So I'm just checking in again. This is so fun and also so difficult when you can't like hear the voices coming in. So so let's see, what questions do you have for me about all of this? Is this helpful to you? It's another vehicle, real estate, business, and so, okay, I'll give you another one. This kind of fun stuff. There's tons of opportunities out there. One of them that I learned about maybe 6 months ago and I keep in the back of my mind is investing in ATM machines, okay? You can buy an ATM machine for not that much money. There's a whole science to it, but let's say it's less than $25,000, maybe a lot less than that. I have not totally researched it, but I know that there are coaches and systems that you can do. So you could buy these machines, and people are actually taking their retirement accounts and buying ATM machines because they're so lucrative that they create a better income stream than a retirement account does. So let's say you buy it, or you have a family member who says, who has money. So they are interested in finding creative vehicles for their investing. So they've got $25,000. So you go buy an ATM machine. Before you do that, you find a place that actually is interested in hosting you for putting that ATM machine in their hotel lobby, for example. There's lots of places, street corners, places that are going to be safe. Well, it turns out that these ATM machines are returning their investments within 2 to 3 years. So meaning you might charge $3 or $4 a transaction, and some of these ATM machines have like 800 transactions a month. And sometimes you won't know that they're going to be in a high traffic, awesome area. So 800 transactions times $4 is $3,200 a month for something that you've made a $25,000 investment with. Granted, this is extreme numbers. They're probably not all going to be this way. You may pay $1 a transaction to the person who's hosting your ATM. So that brings you down, right? So now you're at $3 times, let's just be more conservative, 500. It's $1,500 a month. All you have to do is make sure that money is being deposited into that ATM on a regular basis. You can pay a vault service to do that, or you could do it yourself. But I'm telling you, like, these sorts of opportunities are out there. It just takes being open-minded and being very intentional that I'm going to go find some opportunities to maybe get my seed capital by having a family member help me. And then I'm going to, before you know it, buy my own. And then I'm off and running. And there's a very creative and recession-proof, most likely recession-proof investment vehicle. So does that help, Crystal? You're still here. It's kind of amazing, actually. I'm open and I'm looking for these sorts of things all the time. And that's all it takes. Like, you have to be careful. You have to be very diligent. You have to do your homework. You don't want to be taken advantage of. It's, that's the hard thing with investing, is that there are a lot of people out there that are shysters. And I would say, send me an email before you invest in something, because I'm really good at, I have a great bullshit detector when it comes to this sort of stuff. So yeah, any other questions coming up? Thank you so much for being here. and all the questions coming in, like, it's so amazing, because I think what I was saying earlier is that I know that I can help people, but I also know that I really need the questions. I need to be in the moment with the experience to be able to turn the gifts that I have on. And maybe over time, after I do this for a while, it'll get easier. But I know that it really helps me when you show up and when you ask me questions and you become vulnerable with me about what is concerning you about money, what isn't working for you. The more vulnerable you are about the challenges you face, the more people you can help, because let's face it, like, we are all in this stuff together. I've never had something come up where that was like one person. Like, it just goes, it's overlapping constantly, the challenges that we have with our money fears, with our money worries. It's just endless supply of information. So Vaughn said, I hear people make so much money, but I just can't wrap my brain around big money, although that is what I want. Yeah, it's really cool too, that saying that when you hang out with people who are, the people that you spend the most time with are often going to reflect how much money you're making or how you feel about money. So that's one of the reasons why I think people listen to podcasts, or they get involved in masterminds, or they want to keep something front and center and help them to expand their concepts, because maybe in our childhood, with my story, like, we didn't have very much and we really struggled with money. And so for me to get out of my own way, I read a lot of books. I did a lot of research. I got my MBA in finance. You don't have to do that. But my point is that I wanted to be really familiar with money and the possibilities and how people could build wealth beyond what they had grown up with. It was just really fascinating to me. And that's, I think, why my husband and I were able to do so much. So I feel like I might forget something. I think, the other thing is, just please do post questions. You can email me. You can put them in the Facebook notes. Lots of ways to communicate with me, but I would love to hear your questions, because I want to keep this going. They'll probably be shorter. I kind of went on a little bit longer, but hey, y'all stayed with me, and I really do hope that this is going to help you and inspire you to save more money, take action, be super kind to yourself, and accepting of the fact that you are not in this alone, and that there are baby steps that you can start to take on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis to save money that have you thinking, I am a saver, I am a saver. And I'm sure we'll talk more about this topic in upcoming sessions. So thanks so much for being here. Namaste.